We don't just open accounts for anyone, the teller said coldly, eyeing the black woman in the hoodie like she didn't belong. No one in the lobby knew she was Aisha Coleman, CEO of Coleman Trust. She wasn't there as the boss. She was there undercover to see how her own bank treated people who looked like her. They didn't ask questions when a white man walked out with $30,000, but they questioned her every move over $5,000. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a mirror. If you believe respect should come before prejudice, drop a respect first in the comments and hit subscribe now. You won't believe what happens next, because today's story isn't just about being denied. It's about a lesson and a reckoning that shook an entire institution. Hi everyone, welcome to BW Stories. Let's get started. The glass doors of Coleman Trust's flagship branch in Manhattan hissed open at 8:58 a.m., admitting Aisha Coleman into a world she had forged with her own hands. The New York morning sun sliced through the towering windows, splintering light across the polished marble floor. The air was sharp with the scent of wealth-clean leather, fresh brush ink, and the faint metallic tang of money changing hands. Tellers in crisp navy blazers moved with mechanical precision, their smiles reserved for those deemed worthy. This was her empire, Coleman. Trust, a name that echoed through Wall Street like a war drum. But today, Aisha wasn't here as its queen. She wore a faded gray hoodie, jeans worn at the knees, and scuffed sneakers that squeaked faintly on the marble. Her hair, usually sculpted into a corporate bun, hung in a loose braid beneath a plain baseball cap. In her hand, a tattered wallet held a driver's license under the name Tanya Brown. A carefully crafted lie to strip away her power and expose the rot within her kingdom. Reports had piled up on her desk. Anonymous complaints from Black and Latino customers, tales of scrutiny, rejection, humiliation. Aisha had built Coleman Trust on the promise of fairness, but the data told a different story. Minority customers were leaving in droves, their trust eroded. She needed to see it herself to feel it in her bones. The lobby thrummed with the pulse of high finance. A soft chime rang as a teller processed a transaction, the clatter of keyboards blending with the murmur of deals being struck. Aisha's eyes swept the room, landing on a man at the nearest counter, white mid-50s in a tailored charcoal suit that screamed old money. He leaned casually against the counter, chatting with a teller named Sarah, a blonde woman whose smile was as polished as the chandelier above. "30,000, Mr. Wentworth," Sarah said, sliding a neat stack of bills across the counter. "Anything else today?" Wentworth pocketed the cash with a lazy grin, his gold cufflinks catching the light. "You're a star, Sarah. Keep it up. No forms, no questions. Just trust handed over like a birthright." Aisha's jaw clenched, a spark of anger igniting in her chest. She knew this dance had lived it her whole life. The ease of privilege, the unspoken rules that anointed some and condemned others. She forced her face into neutrality, her breath steady, and stepped into the line. The queue was short, and within moments, Aisha stood before Sarah. The teller's smile vanished, her eyes flicking over Aisha's hoodie, her sneakers, her black skin, her posture stiffened, a wall slamming down. "Good morning, Aisha," said her voice calm, deliberate. "I'd like to open a savings account, $5,000 to deposit." Sarah's brow arched, a flicker of disbelief crossing her face. She reached under the counter and shoved a clipboard toward Aisha. "Fill this out," she said, her tone flat, devoid of warmth, a command, not a courtesy. Aisha took the clipboard, her fingers grazing the cold metal. The form was standard: name, address, occupation. She filled it out as Tanya Brown, a cashier from Harlem, her handwriting precise, unyielding. She slid it back along with her driver's license in a stack of crisp $100 bills, the edges still sharp from the bank. Sarah didn't touch the license. She glanced at the form, then at the cash, and her lips pressed into a thin line. "We need additional verification," she said, pushing the clipboard back. "Proof of income, bank statements, a utility bill." Aisha's pulse spiked, but her voice remained steady. "I've provided everything required. My ID, the deposit. You didn't ask that man for extra verification." She nodded toward the door where Wentworth had exited, his silhouette swallowed by the morning crowd. Sarah's eyes narrowed, a flush creeping up her neck. "That's different," she snapped, folding her arms. "We evaluate each case individually." "How is it different?" Aisha leaned forward, her gaze locking onto Sarah's unyielding. "He walked out with $30,000 in cash. I'm here to deposit 5. Explain it to me." Sarah's face reddened, her confidence wavering. She didn't answer. Instead, her eyes darted to a glass-walled office at the back of the lobby. A man stood there, arms crossed, watching with the cold focus of a hawk. Robert Callahan, branch manager, his name etched on a brass plate. Late 50s white with a face that smiled for clients and sneered for everyone else. Aisha followed Sarah's gaze, and their eyes met hers. Fierce, his glacial, Robert gave a slight nod, a signal as sharp as a blade. Sarah straightened, her resolve bolstered. I'm sorry, she said, her voice dripping with false regret. We can't process this without further documentation. It's policy. Aisha's fingers curled around the edge of the counter, her nails biting into the wood. Show me the policy, she said, each word, a challenge, a spark in the dry tinder of the room. Right now. Sarah froze, her bravado cracking. Then Robert's voice sliced through the air, low and commanding. Is there a problem here? He strode towards them, his polished shoes clicking like a metronome. His presence shifted the lobby, tellers glancing up, customers shifting uncomfortably. Aisha didn't flinch, even as the weight of his authority pressed against her like a physical force. This customer is refusing to comply with verification protocols. Sarah said, her voice now smug, backed by her superior's shadow. Aisha's eyes locked onto Robert's. I'm not refusing anything. I provided my ID, my deposit. You processed a larger transaction for a white customer without question. I'm asking why I'm being treated differently. Robert's smile was a weapon, thin and razor sharp. Miss, he said, lingering on the word as if it were a slur. Our policies protect our clients. Some transactions require extra scrutiny. It's not personal, not personal. Aisha's voice rose sharp enough to pierce the polished silence. You didn't scrutinize him. You scrutinized me the second I walked in. Why the air thickened, a storm brewing in the hush. Robert's jaw tightened, his facade of professionalism fracturing. If you can't cooperate, I'll have to ask you to leave. Aisha laughed low and bitter. Cooperate? I'm standing here with everything you need and you're inventing reasons to turn me away. That's not policy. That's prejudice. The word exploded into the room, shattering the veneer of civility. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her chest. Robert's face flushed crimson, his eyes narrowing to slits. Around them, customers whispered, their phones discreetly raised, capturing the scene. Aisha felt the weight of their stares, the suffocating pressure of being the spectacle, the problem, the threat. Robert leaned closer, his voice a venomous hiss. You're causing a scene and we don't tolerate disruptions. Leave now or I'll have you removed. Aisha didn't budge. Do it, she said, her voice steady, defiant. Show everyone exactly who you are. Robert didn't hesitate. He raised a hand, a sharp gesture that summoned Michael, a burly white security guard stationed by the entrance. Michael's boots thudded against the marble, his face a mask of indifference. His hand rested on the baton at his hip, a silent warning. Aisha stood her ground, her heart pounding, but her expression unyielding. She knew this moment had lived it in countless forms. The black woman who dared to speak, to demand to exist in a space not meant for her. The room watched, a collective breath held as Michael stopped beside her. Ma'am, he said, his voice flat, impersonal. You need to leave. Aisha met his gaze, searching for a flicker of doubt of humanity. She found none. I'm a customer, she said each word. A blade, I have a right to be here. Not if you're disrupting operations. Robert cut in, his tone smug, victorious. He nodded to Michael, escort her out. Michael's hand closed around Aisha's arm, his grip iron tight. The contact sent a jolt through her, a visceral reminder of every time she'd been made to feel small, powerless. She pulled back, but his hold tightened, and he yanked her toward the door. The lobby blurred as she stumbled, her sneakers squeaking against the marble. Let go of me. Aisha's voice rang out sharp and commanding, but Michael didn't stop. He shoved her forward, her shoulder slamming into the glass door. A gasp rippled through the crowd, followed by murmurs of shock, disapproval. But no one moved, no one intervened. The door swung open and the cold New York air hit Aisha like a slap. Michael released her with a final push, sending her staggering onto the sidewalk. Her wallet and ID, still on the counter, were snatched up by Sarah and tossed out after her, landing in a puddle with a wet slap. The indignity burned, a white-hot rage curling in Aisha's chest. She straightened, brushing her sleeve, her eyes blazing. The crowd inside watched through the glass, their faces a mix of curiosity and discomfort. Robert stood by the counter, arms crossed, a satisfied smirk on his face. Sarah hovered behind him, her confidence restored. Now that the problem was outside, but Aisha wasn't done. She reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone and hit record. The red light blinked, capturing the scene. Robert's smugness, Sarah's complicity, Michael's indifference. You refused to open my account, she said, her voice clear, carrying across the sidewalk. You humiliated me, threw me out all because of the color of my skin. This is Coleman, Trust, and this is how you treat your customers. Robert's smirk faltered, a flicker of unease crossing his face. Sarah's eyes widened, her hand twitching as if to snatch the phone. Michael shifted his stance, less certain. Aisha kept recording her gaze unwavering. Then a shadow moved beside her. Tyrone, a black security guard, stepped forward at mid-30s with a weary slump to his shoulders. He crouched to retrieve Aisha's soaked ID and wallet. He dusted them off his movements, careful, almost reverent, and handed them to her. This place, he muttered, just loud enough for her to hear, does this to us every day. Doesn't matter who you are, doctor, lawyer, nobody. If you're black, you're suspect. Aisha took the ID, her fingers brushing his. Thank you, she said softly, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. Tyrone shook his head, his eyes dark with resignation. Ain't nothing new. They keep us in our place, security cleaners. Never the suits, the words cut deeper than Aisha expected, a reminder of the world she'd fought to escape, the world she thought she'd changed by building Coleman Trust. She tightened her grip on her phone, her resolve hardening. Not today, she said, more to herself than to him. She opened her contacts and dialed Olivia Chen, her chief operating officer. The line rang once, twice, then connected. Olivia. Aisha said, her voice low. Controlled. Get to the Manhattan branch, now. There was a pause, then Olivia's voice sharp with concern. Aisha? What's going on? Just get here, Aisha said, ending the call. She slid her phone into her pocket, her eyes flicking to Tyrone. Stay close, she told him. This is about to get real. Tyrone's lips twitched, a ghost of a smile. Oh, I ain't going nowhere. The next 20 minutes stretched like a lifetime. Aisha stood on the sidewalk, her phone still recording, capturing the faces inside Robert's smug satisfaction, Sarah's nervous glances, the customers who pretended not to see. Passers-by slowed, sensing the tension, their phones joining hers in a silent chorus of witnesses. A small crowd gathered, drawn by the drama. Their murmurs, a low hum against the city's roar. Inside the bank carried on, its polished facade, unbroken. Robert had returned to his office, his silhouette visible through the glass as he spoke to Sarah. His gestures, sharp, dismissive. Michael lingered by the door, his eyes darting to Aisha every few seconds as if expecting her to vanish. She didn't. A sleek black SUV screeched to a halt at the curb, its tires biting the pavement. The door swung open and Olivia Chen stepped out, a force of nature in a tailored blazer. Early 50s Asian American with eyes that could cut through steel. Olivia was Aisha's right hand, a woman who'd climbed the corporate ladder through sheer grit. Her gaze found Aisha immediately narrowing as she took in the scene. Her CEO on the sidewalk, Tyrone beside her, the wet wallet in her hand. Olivia didn't pause. She strode past Michael, ignoring his attempt to intercept and push through the glass doors. The lobby fell silent, the air shifting as if the building itself sensed the storm. Aisha followed Tyrone, trailing close behind his steps, heavy with anticipation. Robert emerged from his office, his smile faltering as he saw Olivia. Ms. Chen, he said, his voice forcibly smooth. I wasn't expecting. You weren't expecting a lot of things, Olivia cut in her tone, icy lethal. She turned to Aisha, her expression softening for a split second before hardening again. Aisha, tell me what happened. Aisha stepped forward, her voice steady, commanding. I came here as Tanya Brown, a customer to open a savings account with $5,000. Sarah refused to process it, demanded extra verification. She didn't ask of a white customer who walked out with $30,000. When I questioned it, Robert had me thrown out physically. My ID was tossed in the street. All because I'm black, the words landed like a thunderclap. Sarah paled, her hands clutching the counter. Robert's mouth opened, then closed his face, a mask of shock and denial. Michael shifted uncomfortably, his baton suddenly a liability rather than a shield. The tellers froze their transactions, forgotten. Customers whispered, their phones still raised, capturing every second. Olivia's gaze snapped to Robert. Is this true? Robert recovered, his voice dripping with false indignation. Miss Chen, this is a misunderstanding. We have strict protocols for certain transactions. Certain transactions, Aisha interrupted, her voice rising sharp enough to cut glass. You mean transactions by black customers? Because I watched a white man walk out with more money than I offered, and you didn't blink. Don't lie to me, Robert. I've got the data. She pulled out her phone, opening a file she'd prepared weeks ago. Our internal audits show that Black and Latino customers are 3 times more likely to be denied accounts or loans than white customers with similar profiles. They're asked for extra documentation 70% more often. This isn't a coincidence, it's a pattern, and you're part of it. The lobby was a tomb. The silence suffocating Robert's face drained of color, his hands twitching at his sides. Sarah's eyes darted to the exit as if she could escape the truth. Olivia's expression was unreadable, but her voice was steel. Robert, Sarah, you're done. Effective immediately. Robert's jaw dropped, Miss Chen. This is outrageous. Outrageous, Aisha snapped, stepping closer, her presence towering despite her casual clothes. You humiliated me in front of a crowd. You threw me out of my own bank. You've been doing this to customers for years, and I have the proof. You're not just fired, you're facing a lawsuit. Olivia nodded, her eyes flicking to Michael. You too. Hand over your badge. Michael hesitated, then unclipped his badge, his face a mix of shame and defiance. He dropped it on the counter and walked out the door, hissing shut behind him. Aisha turned to Tyrone, who stood quietly, his eyes wide with disbelief. Tyrone, she said, her voice softening, you're the new head of security for this branch. Starting now, Tyrone blinked, his mouth opening, then closing. Ma'am, you saw what was right? Aisha said, her gaze steady. You acted with dignity. That's what this bank needs. Olivia gestured to a teller. Process Ms. Coleman's account. Now the teller, a young woman who had stayed silent, scrambled to comply, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Within minutes, Aisha's account was opened, her deposit secured. The stack of bills sat neatly before her, a small victory in a much larger war. But Aisha wasn't finished. She turned to the crowd, her voice carrying across the lobby, resonant and unyielding. This isn't just about me. It's about every Black customer who's been turned away, every Latino customer who's been scrutinized, every person who's been made to feel less than because of their skin. Coleman Trust was built on fairness, and we failed you. But that changes today. She held up her phone, the data file still open. I'm releasing this audit to the public. Every instance of bias, every unfair denial will be exposed. And I'm launching a nationwide campaign, Banking Without Bias, to ensure no one else endures what I did. We're deploying AI to monitor transactions to catch bias before it happens. This bank will lead the way, or it will answer to me. The crowd erupted in murmurs, some nodding, others filming their phones, a chorus of accountability. Olivia stepped forward, her voice firm. Every employee will undergo mandatory bias training. Every manager will be audited. And if I find one more instance of this, you won't just lose your job, you'll face the law. Aisha's eyes found Robert, now standing by the door. His arrogance shattered. You should have checked my ID, she said, her voice low. Final. Then she turned and walked out. Tyrone at her side, the weight of her victory tempered by the knowledge of how much work lay ahead. But the storm was just beginning. As Aisha stepped onto the sidewalk, her phone buzzed with notifications. The video she'd recorded had been uploaded by a bystander, going viral within minutes. Hashtags and hashtag banking while Black, hashtag Coleman Trust trended on X. The clips spreading like wildfire. Commenters raged. This is why we can't trust banks. Aisha. Coleman is a hero. The crowd outside had grown, reporters arriving with cameras, their questions a cacophony. Aisha ignored them, her focus on Tyrone. You ready for this? She asked, her voice steady. He nodded, his jaw set. Born ready, ma'am. She gave him a small smile, then turned to face the cameras. What happened here today isn't new, she said, her voice cutting through the noise. It's the reality for Black Americans every day. But Coleman Trust is done being complicit. We're tearing down the systems that let this happen, and we're inviting every bank in America to do the same. The reporters surged forward, but Aisha raised a hand, silencing them. No questions. Just watch what we do next. She walked to her SUV, Tyrone opening the door and slid inside. As the car pulled away, she opened her laptop, drafting a press release that would shake the industry to its core. The weeks that followed were a maelstrom. Aisha's public release of Coleman Trust's audit data ignited a firestorm. The New York Times ran a front-page story, Banking while Black, Coleman Trust exposes industry bias. CNN aired a special report interviewing Black customers who'd faced similar treatment. The Wall Street Journal published an op-ed praising Aisha's courage, but warning of the economic fallout. Rival banks scrambled to conduct their own audits, fearing lawsuits and public backlash. The Banking Without Bias campaign became a national movement endorsed by the NAACP, Black Lives Matter, and civil rights icons like John Lewis's foundation. Aisha testified before Congress, her voice steady as she recounted her experience, urging lawmakers to regulate banking practices. This isn't about one bank, she said, her eyes sweeping the room. It's about an industry that's profited from prejudice for centuries. It's time to pay the debt. Coleman Trust's AI system, dubbed Fairbank, was rolled out across all branches, analyzing transactions in real time to flag potential bias. Early results showed a 40% reduction in discriminatory denial, earning Aisha a Time magazine cover. The woman who changed banking. But the victories came with costs. Shareholders grumbled about stock dips, and anonymous threats flooded Aisha's inbox, their vitriol, a reminder of the stakes. Aisha returned to the Manhattan branch 3 months later on a crisp spring morning. The lobby was transformed, warmer, more human, the tellers. A diverse mix of races and backgrounds greeted customers with genuine smiles. Tyrone, now in a crisp suit, oversaw security with quiet authority, his presence a testament to what was possible when dignity was recognized. A young black teller, Maya, approached Aisha as she entered. Miss Coleman, she said, her voice trembling with gratitude. I got this job because of you. I was turned away from 3 banks before this. Thank you. Aisha's smile was heavy. Her eyes shadowed. Don't thank me yet, she said. We're just starting. She walked to the center of the lobby where a new plaque hung on the wall. Its words etched in bronze. Money has no color, justice has no price. Below it, a digital screen displayed real-time data from Fairbank, a testament to transparency, a promise kept. Customers paused to read it, some nodding, others taking photos. The numbers, a quiet rebellion against the old ways. Aisha stepped outside, the New York skyline stretching before her, a city of power and possibility, but also of pain. She thought of her grandmother, a seamstress who'd saved every penny in a jar because banks didn't trust her. She thought of Tyrone, of Maya, of every customer who'd been made to feel invisible. The fight wasn't over, not for her, not for them. She pulled out her phone and opened a note she'd written that morning. Show up, speak truth, change the system. She saved it, no title, just a reminder. Then she walked into the city, her steps steady, her heart full of fire, knowing that the silent currency of justice was worth more than all the money in her vaults. A year later, the impact of Aisha's actions rippled far beyond Coleman Trust. The Banking Without Bias campaign had spurred legislation, with the Fair Banking Act passing Congress, mandating transparency in financial transactions. Over a dozen major banks adopted AI systems modeled on Fairbank, and consumer trust in minority communities began to recover slowly. Cautiously, Aisha became a reluctant icon, her face on magazine covers, her voice a staple on talk shows. But she shunned the spotlight, focusing instead on the work mentoring young Black professionals, funding financial literacy programs, and speaking at community centers. She partnered with HBCUs to create scholarships for aspiring bankers, naming them after her grandmother, Ella May, whose jar of pennies had been her first lesson in resilience. Back at the Manhattan branch, the plaque remained a quiet sentinel. Tyrone had been promoted again now, overseeing security for the entire Northeast region. Maya, the young teller, was training to become a branch manager. Her confidence, a spark that lit up the lobby. The branch had become a pilgrimage site of sorts, visited by activists, students, and curious customers who wanted to see where it all began. One evening, as Aisha prepared to leave her office, she received an email from an anonymous sender. Attached was a photo of the plaque taken at dusk, the bronze glowing under the lobby's lights. Below it, a single line, "Thank you for seeing us." Aisha stared at the screen, her throat tightening. She thought of the girl she'd been growing up in a Harlem walk-up, dreaming of a world where she could walk into any bank and be seen not as a threat, not as a quota, but as a person. She thought of the woman she'd become standing on that sidewalk, her ID in a puddle, her rage a fire that refused to be quenched. She forwarded the email to Olivia, Tyrone, and Maya with a simple note. We're not done. Then she stood, grabbed her coat, and stepped into the night. The city alive with possibility, its pulse a reminder that justice was a currency that never stopped circulating. The story of Aisha Coleman isn't just hers, it's ours. It's the story of every person who's been judged, dismissed, or silenced because of who they are. If this moved you, if it made you angry, if it made you hope, then do something. Share it, speak it, demand better. Because the currency of justice only grows when we refuse to stay silent.
I love this story. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more information. Don't forget to check out the video currently on your screen. You won't want to miss it. See you in the next one.